you wrote a book recently.
The Wise Investor, yep. It's a modern parable. It's about
Okay.
creating financial freedom and living your best life. So kind of wove together my background in coaching and then my background as an investor the last 19 years
Mm-hmm.
into a book that's almost kind of like if you blended Rich Dad, Poor Dad and The Alchemist and The
Mm-hmm.
Richest Man in Babylon and wove it into one story. That's kind of like the Wise Investor book.
I'm Brian Briscoe, host of the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. And this is a first deal episode where we walk through what it takes for someone to find, fund, and close on their first apartment complex. And if you're an aspiring investor yourself, you are probably trying to do exactly the same thing. So before we get to this episode, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and the little notification bell to make sure you get notified every single time we post a new episode. And now, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. This is Brian Briscoe, the host, of course, and I'm very excited for today's show. Maybe a little bit nervous because we don't do episodes like this very often, but I'm super excited to have Rich Fettke on the line with us. Rich, welcome to the show today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Good to have you on, first of all. And we were talking about this just a second ago, but for all the listeners, I met Rich at the Best Ever conference, great conference to go to. Very briefly talked, and then later when their team reached out to me, I'm like, yeah, I'd love to have that guy on the podcast. Straying from the usual format, but Rich, do us a favor, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Maybe my journey into real estate investing might be a good place to start. It's 20 years ago exactly that I had this amazing wife, a couple of daughters. They were 10 and 3 years old. I had just signed a book deal with Simon & Schuster. I had a thriving business coaching practice, giving keynotes all over the country. It was just feeling amazing. And then I was diagnosed with melanoma, and they had thought that it spread to my liver. And I met with an oncologist who told me I had 6 months to live.
Ouch.
And so it was a rock. Yeah, it was definitely an ouch. It was a punch in the gut. It was a life shocker. Thankfully, the doctor's diagnosis was wrong, but we didn't know that for about 3 months. I went through multiple tests from CT scans to ultrasounds and eventually a PET scan that I had to wait for. But my wife, Kathy, was a stay-at-home mom at the time. And she was like, what am I going to do for an income if Rich is gone? And so she's the one that rallied and said, I'm going to find out a way to make an income. And she started to seek out mentors and talk to financially successful people. And she found out those financially successful people got that way through real estate. And so she came home and she's like, I think I know what I can do here. And so one of those mentors was a mortgage broker. And so he said, go get your real estate license and I'll show you how to invest. You can start doing the loans for people and you can start to invest. And so after I got the false diagnosis, and they said it was a false positive, they call it, that's when Kathy and I just rallied. We got out there. We were in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. We did a cash out refi on our property there. And we took that money and we went to Rockwall, Texas, a little north of Dallas. And we bought 5 investment properties.
Oh, nice.
And that was our start into investing. We learned about becoming landlords, about cash flow, about appreciation, about the tax deductions, all this great stuff. And then actually it was friends and family who were like, how are you guys investing out of state? How are you doing this? Just that they were in that old investor mindset of, you invest close to home. And so we said, let's form a group of friends and family and help them, do this, show them what we're doing. And that group that we thought would be maybe 50 or 100 people today has grown to over 64,000 people. So we started this company, Real Wealth, back in 2003. And that's what it's grown to today. So that was what, it was through desperation to real estate investing.
Now, I mean, silver lining, first of all, very, very happy it was a false diagnosis. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking today. Do you think you would have done anything real estate wise, or do you think you guys would be anywhere close to where you are now if it wasn't for that false diagnosis?
No, absolutely not. It's the old saying, with every curse comes a blessing. And so the blessing in that curse, and what would seem like a real bad curse at the time, was definitely the blessing that got us to see things a new way, to get into investing. And honestly, I always thought that I would invest. I did one of those personal development exercises where you write your eulogy. That was way back in '95. And in that, I wrote, I was going to be 108 when I die. He was a real estate investor and everything. But I had this mindset of, you have to have a whole bunch of money to be a real estate investor.
Yeah.
I didn't really know about creative financing or any of that. So no, I don't think we would be, I know we wouldn't be where we are today. And I know we wouldn't have helped as many people as we have
Yeah.
today, for sure.
Now, the real wealth. I know Kathy is the host of that podcast as well, but when you talk with your real wealth, what do you guys offer as far as education, and what do you need people to bring to the table to be part of that?
Grit is one of those, a
Good.
willingness to learn. But really, it's just back in 2003, we were going around to these different RIAs
Mhm.
and kind of disgusted when Kathy was a mortgage broker, in
Mhm.
the old guru thing, the back of the room sales pressure thing. It was even more prevalent back then.
Mhm.
And so and we decided we want to do something where the education is free. We want to be the anti-guru. And that's why we called our company Real Wealth. We wanted to keep it real. We wanted to
Mhm.
provide this real education for real estate, and that was our commitment. So today we've produced over 1,000 free webinars.
Mhm.
Our investment counselors work with our clients for free. And so basically what we said is we want you to make your money through real estate investing. We don't want
Mhm.
to make money off you. And so I'm a licensed broker. So
Mhm.
just helping people get into investment properties, I get the broker fee.
Mhm.
That's how we monetize it. But so all the education is free. And so that's the way it works, is we educate people. A lot of times, honestly, it's inspiring people to see
Mhm.
things a new way, to actually
Yeah.
realize they can invest. Because I think as Americans, we're kind of brainwashed that investing means stock market, means the Wall Street casino.
Oh
No,
yeah.
a lot of times it's kind of showing people a different way and showing that they could actually be investors too, and break that paradigm.
The way I look at it, I mean, Wall Street and these big investment companies have done a really good job at marketing and,
Amazing.
brainwashing people. But when you look at it, real estate's the original investment. The stock market's the alternative investment. When you look at
Very
history, I
true.
mean, lands and titles is how people for generations and millennia have held their wealth. And the stock market is the alternative. And it's interesting,
Love that.
somebody had a really, really good PR campaign going a long time ago, and now everybody's just, hitting the I believe button, drinking the Kool-Aid and doing all of that. But yeah, I
So
love I
true.
love real estate. I mean, otherwise I don't think I'd have a podcast on real estate or anything like that. It's a great way to build wealth. And also say I very much appreciate, keeping it free, and that's something that, a lot of people look at these education programs and it comes with like a 5-figure tuition form. You guys keep it free and you find ways to add value. And I mean, you end up making money from services, but you're providing that value for people to get started and changing mindsets in a lot of ways. And
Mm,
that's definitely valuable. Very much appreciate that.
thank you. Yeah, so it's super inspiring to me. Yeah, watching people go from where they are to where they get is just like, well, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Seeing people create real wealth, for
yeah,
sure.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, understand you wrote a book recently.
The Wise Investor, yep, it's a modern parable. It's about
Okay.
creating financial freedom and living your best life. So kind of wove together my background in coaching and then my
Mhm.
background as an investor the last 19 years
Mhm.
into a book that's almost kind of like if you blended Rich Dad, Poor Dad and The Alchemist and The
Mhm.
Richest Man in Babylon and wove it into one story. That's kind of like the Wise Investor book.
I have all three of those books on the shelf behind me, and those are
Awesome.
probably three of my favorite. I just told my 11-year-old that I would pay her, I think 15 is what I told her. I told her I'd pay her $15 if she would read The Richest Man in Babylon, and so she just started that one. And The
Wow, that's
Alchemist.
a good dad right there. It's
Yeah,
so much better than paying an allowance for chores, right? You teach your kids how to be workers when you do that, but
yeah.
teaching, giving them money for education, that's wisdom right there.
And I look at that, and she said, "Dad, you're gonna pay me to read a book?" She's like, "I'll read any book you want me to." And my response to her was, "If you read this book, it's gonna save me a lot more than $15, in the life. I mean, I'm gonna make more money off
Yeah.
that too." But yeah, starting her financial education early, and Alchemist is a great book too. So anyway, you just hit the nail on the head. I mean, you're really appealing to me. You picked the three of my favorite books of all time. The Wise Investor Parable. Tell us a little bit about the parable, and tell us why we would want to grab a copy of this.
I mean, there are so many amazing books out there on real estate, on investing, on wealth mindset, and about motivation and self-discipline and all that good stuff. But I read a really wild statistic, and it's that 86% of people who start a nonfiction book don't
Mhm.
finish it. And being the author of a nonfiction book that I wrote back in 2002, I didn't want that to happen again. I wanted people
Yeah.
to finish this. So and I love parables too. All those, the Go-Giver, the monk who sold his Ferrari, so many amazing parables
Yeah.
that I finished. And those are the ones that I finished. So I was like, it was actually my coach. I talked to my coach every other Friday, and he had read my first book. And he's like, so when are you going to write your next book? And I'm like, I wrote my book. I'm done.
Yeah.
But he kept kind of planting the seed. And we were applying this thing to our business called story branding. Don Miller, this guy wrote a book called Building a Story Brand. It's all about applying the hero's journey to your business. And so the customer is the hero, the business is the guide, and the guide gives a plan. And I got into this whole thing from Joseph Campbell about the hero's journey and storytelling, and was just fascinated by it. And so one day in one of those coaching sessions, I said, if I was going to write a book, I'd probably write a parable story. And then, so he heard that as a good coach and kind of stayed with it.
Yeah.
And he said, so what's your next step? And then all of a sudden, then I started to think about the story, and I got obsessed with it. And so, yeah, it's like a fictional story, but it really brings in some true characters from my life that I've experienced. Everything from members of our network that we saw invest and grow and become successful. What happened to Kathy and me going through 2008 as real estate investors. I wanted to share a lot of those lessons also, especially with younger investors today, because I see a lot of younger investors today who've done so well in the last 10 years. And I want them to heed the advice of someone who's been through it, to just to be smart, to be wise.
Yeah.
And so that was it. It was it. And I wanted to emotionalize the information. I wanted to inspire people, finish the story, be captivated by it, but be inspired by emotionalizing this information so it creates action. As someone who used to be a coach, taking action and accountability is really important to me for my clients. So I wanted it to inspire people to read it, have a mindset shift wherever that happens, and then to take action with it so they can create financial freedom and even more, live their best lives.
Nice.
Hence the subtitle.
Yeah, I mean that's what it's all about. That's definitely what's all. And I love the parables, and I think you're right with the nonfiction. I mean, I'm sure somebody backed that up with data, but the thing that I do like about The Alchemist is it is a parable. It is a story, and when you think about it, there's many different levels of that you can learn from that story. And anyway, great book. And the same thing with Richest Man in Babylon. It's a story where you can read it and learn a little bit, or you can just dive into it and learn a lot. And I think parables are a very powerful way to teach. Now, just out of curiosity, I mean, if I remember right, Richest Man in Babylon is in antiquity, and The Alchemist, that's
Yes.
Spain in, before vehicles. I don't know what time it was set. What's the setting of yours? Did you pick like an antiquity or an ancient time frame, or is it more modern?
That's why the subtitle is actually a modern parable about
Okay.
creating financial freedom and living your best life. So yeah, I wanted to be a modern parable that people could relate to. That, and a lot of readers have told me that. They said, "Wow, that's my story." That guy Ryan Brooks is the character in it, and he's this hardworking family man. He's got a wife, a couple kids. He's making solid six figures. He's maxing out his 401k, but he has no time for his family, for his life, to be in the shape he wants to be in, to be fulfilled. He feels he's trying to climb the corporate ladder, not realizing that that's just taking more time away from his family and the people he loves. So it really is in a modern setting. It's today, and it follows his life when he meets this wise friend and mentor who shows him about creating financial freedom. He teaches them amazing lessons about real estate, a lot of the lessons that we know, that your listeners know. But so some of it for your listeners, it might be a little bit preaching to the choir, but they'll be nodding, saying, yeah, I agree with this. This is the advice, and the mentor, he invests in everything from, he started in single family. He made his way up to investing in, big buildings and apartment buildings and self-storage. And so he kind of does it all, even mobile home parks. So it's kind of that too. Like I'm speaking to the people who've been brainwashed, as we're talking about the only stocks, and the mentor actually explains to Ryan, the mentoree and the protagonist in the story, he actually compares. He said, say you had 200,000 and you put it in real estate, and then you took 200,000, you put it in the stock market, even on margin, and then you take 200,000 and put it in gold. And then he says, okay, now let's take a look at this in 10 years. And he walks him through, and it's a game changer. So he said,
Yeah.
That was
One of the first
that
things we
purpose.
did, first company that I co-founded, we had a lead magnet or an ebook of sorts where we compared real estate versus the stock market, and we had to tone down our numbers so it would be believable. It's just like,
I love that.
okay, we can't
Yeah.
we can't say the real estate investment 4x is the stock market. I'm like, let's tone down our numbers a little bit, and maybe we can get it down to like a 1.5 multiple so people will actually believe it. But didn't want
That's
it
smart.
too good to be true. At the same time, we chose to start start the clock at 2000, which is a relative high in the stock market. So we may have played with years and time periods to make that work out in our favor, but
Yeah, this is the mentor in this. He just kind of like plays it out over the simple over time. On
yeah.
average, it's like this 4% return when you look at stock market and you look at real estate, when you look at average over the last 50 years. So just kind of playing those averages. And then yeah, it's kind of mind blowing to see what that return on investment is. And sometimes that's not even counting the tax benefits,
Yeah.
or the cash flow.
Oh
It's
yeah.
really
Yeah.
cool.
I mean, tax benefits are huge. And I know a lot of people with,
Amazing.
once people, I think, get into like the seven-figure net worth, they really start looking at the tax benefits from real estate, and it makes a big impact. That the more you pay in taxes, the more friendly real estate is as an investment because of the impact on your bottom line. So
Yeah, government loves the real estate investors for sure.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and for good reason. You provide housing, you
Yeah.
provide a service that the government doesn't want to provide. It's a huge incentive. And as a real estate investor, I love not paying taxes. That's one thing that's amazing.
I'm
So
with you on that.
yeah. But about the book, I mean, when you close your eyes and you imagine, your ideal reader reading the book, what actions does your book, what actions would you want your book to prompt? What would you want that, ideal reader to do after reading your book?
Oh, I like that. It's
Yeah.
again, it depends on the reader. So I kind of went back into like two avatars,
Mhm.
and each time I would write a chapter or give thought to the story, I was like, one avatar was that Henry, the high earner, not rich yet person. They are only thinking about investing in the stock market. And so some of it was for that. So for that person, I really wanted them to take a look at their lifestyle creep.
Yeah.
And that lifestyle creep of the more they make in their corporate job, the more they spend, the bigger house, the bigger car, the boat, the
Yeah.
whatever it is, and they're not having their money make money for them. They're not investing it really, and also to show those folks the difference really between stocks and real estate, like we were just talking about,
Yeah.
and even that benefit like that. What if the bank will loan you 80% to loan you 80% to buy your asset, but you get all those benefits. You
Yeah.
know that. And then, so that would be the one avatar. So I would want those folks to investigate real estate investing, to learn about it, learn how to
Mhm.
do it right. And again, learn how to do it right, meaning a lot of those lessons that we learned going through 2008, really, so they don't make those mistakes, but they actually build some real wealth. Then the other avatar would be the person who is investing now. They own a couple investment properties or one multifamily or something like that. They're more
Mhm.
in that early phases, and they're getting some traction. They're making some progress, and that was to inspire them to think like wealthy people.
Yeah.
And so I've got a lot of wealthy friends, and when I say wealthy, I'm not just talking about rich friends. I'm talking about people who are truly wealthy in life.
Mhm.
I live in Malibu, California. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of rich people. And they're
Yeah.
not all happy. They're not all fulfilled. It's like
Mhm.
it's a trip. So, and that comes from all those years of
Yeah.
coaching CEOs and executives and entrepreneurs, and realizing that money is just part of the equation. And we know that, and I'm sure your readers would know that. I mean,
Yeah.
your listeners would know that. But it's really looking at the difference of how wealthy people think and how they operate,
Mhm.
and time. So it's
Yeah.
the value of time. And so I'm hoping that avatar, that person who is already investing a little bit and everything, but they might be too much in the grind. They might be
Mhm.
thinking, I just have to really just commit, throw my life out of balance right now, out of whack, to be able to get from where I am to where I want to be. That's my
Yeah.
vision. And being a coach and coaching people for 20 years, I've seen that there's a different way to operate. And
Yeah.
truly wealthy people, they value time more than money.
Mhm.
And so a great example of that is the mentor in the story talks about assets. And I think Robert Kiyosaki did an awesome job in Rich Dad Poor Dad with explaining assets and liabilities, financial assets and liabilities. And Robert actually wrote the foreword for The Wise Investor. I got honored on that one. Super cool. And so the mentor in the story takes it a little different. He says an asset is anything that provides income, better health, happiness, or time. And a liability is just the opposite. A liability in your life is something that takes away income, happiness, health, or time. So it allows us and the readers to kind of compartmentalize true assets and liabilities and looking at things, say, okay, is this an asset? Is this adding to my happiness? Is this adding to my income? Is this going to be free me up in my time, like maybe hiring someone? Or is this a liability? It's just like, is this person a drain on my life? Are they kind of toxic? Are they pulling me down and holding me back? And so some people in our lives are sometimes liabilities, and recognizing that and recognizing it quickly can be really important. So you can grow the assets in your life and start to look at how can I get rid of these liabilities that aren't bringing me a return.
I love that perspective. Robert Kiyosaki, when he in Rich Dad Poor Dad, he talks about financial assets, but you just completely expanded it to like a whole life asset. It's not just finance. It's not just whether it's putting money into your pocket or taking money out. But I like how you put that, how, health, relationships, and you kind of told that from being a financial thing to a whole life asset. I love that. So
awesome. Yeah. Kind of a holistic approach to it.
Yeah. So, and something I never really thought of when I look at assets. I still have that Robert Kiyosaki. Fortunately, I've adopted the Robert Kiyosaki approach instead of, the Poor Dad approach where, assets are like financial instruments, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. It's what we invest for, right? It's not just to have a ton of money, we want that too, but there's so much more.
Yeah. Now there's a question, and anybody who listens to this show knows this, and I'm not going to, pull you, make you admit whether you do or not, but it's a question I ask everybody is about their motivation. I call it the big burning why. And I actually misquoted Stephen Covey. He said you had to have a big burning yes. And then one day I ended up misquoting Stephen Covey on that one. But we talk about the motivation to do things, the motivation to become successful, the motivation, and money, I think in a lot of ways helps us to do what we want to do. But I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody else. What is your big burning why?
I'm actually really clear on that with my years of coaching and being coached and being constantly asked that, what's your purpose? What's your why? What are you about? And so mine is the same as our company. And it's to help, our company is to help people create real wealth. And we say real wealth is having the money and the freedom to live life on your own terms. And so my personal why, and what gets me going in a good way more than anything, is helping people become a better version of themselves. And I know that's almost like a meme nowadays, the better version of yourself. You see so much on social media, but it's like there's something that I get teary-eyed. Like I'm an adventure sport athlete. I'm a rock climber and surfer, and I love that thing. And when I take someone, for example, climbing, and they start climbing and they're scared, they're challenged, and they get to a spot and they're like, I can't go any further. And I kind of coach them through it. I have them breathe deeply. And then I say, just there's one hold right there. Try moving over that. And they take that one step and they break through it. Or taking someone rappelling where they get to the top of the cliff and they're so scared and kind of talking them through it. And then they do it. And they're so proud of themselves. They're so lit up. They're so on fire. I literally get tears in my eyes. And the same thing as a coach is coaching someone and find out what's important to you. What's your goal? What's your ideal life look like? And then they start taking the actions week by week and month by month. And they start getting there. And they're like, I can't believe who I've become. That's absolutely my why. No doubt about it.
I love it. I love it. And very, very crystal clear on that as well. And I think the more clear people are with their why, the more attainable it is. I mean, you have a realistic goal, you know exactly what you want. It's a lot easier to go after a very clear and realistic why than a nebulous, well, I just want to help people. But anyway, that's so you mentioned coaching a lot, and I've been to a couple of coaching, hired coaches, here and there. What do you think the biggest benefit is to having a coach?
Oh, the biggest benefit. Let me define coaching a little bit the way I'm talking about
Right.
coaching, because I think it's important. In the Wise Investor book, he's a mentor. And so I see it as three different ways. You can be a coach, you can be a consultant, or you can be a mentor. And so a mentor is someone who's been there, done that. And they say, if you do what I did, you can be where I am. Which is awesome. And that's the mentor in this book. I see a consultant as someone who's an expert in one chosen area, a specific niche, and they can really help you get there, and they have all this knowledge. I see a coach as someone who helps you get from where you are to where you want to be. So they don't have to be an expert. They don't even have to have been there, done that, but they have to know how to powerfully ask amazing, powerful questions that help draw out the best in you, that help you see a new perspective that you might not be seeing. So like I said, I have a coach I talk to every other week. And the reason why is because I can only ask myself so many questions. And I end up asking myself the same questions over and over. Having someone else who's skilled and trained and certified as a coach, he like holds up the mirror for me. And I've had female coaches and male coaches. They hold up the mirror and they boldly have you look at yourself and how you're operating, and really asking you, who are you at your best? What do you want? What could you do? What will you do? How will I know? How can I support you? It gets us out of our own way, and it has us just be way more effective, more focused. We take the actions that we know are best for us, because intuitively, on a deep level, we usually know what's best for us, and we're resourceful. So a coach is going to say, like, how could you learn that? Who could you reach out to? What book could you read? And how do you want me to support you in that? And then, what conference could you go to? But then so often people know what to do, but they don't do what they know. So that's where I think a coach comes in, is really that clarity, that perspective, and to help people take action.
I love that distinction. I've always kind of used coach and mentors synonymously, but I love the distinction. The mentor is, if you do what I've done, you can get to where I'm at, and a coach helps unlock your potential. And I love how you phrase that. Going back to the book, I ordered a copy earlier today. Where can people get a copy? What formats is it in? Tell us all about where people can learn about the book and read it for themselves.
Yeah, thanks for that. The ebook is already out in the Kindle. It's on Amazon, all major booksellers. It came out in April. It's actually doing really well. I'm super happy with the results and how many people are buying it. And then the hardcover and the audiobook, which I narrated, which was a fun challenge, that comes out end of August. Okay. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah, and it'll be all major booksellers, but Amazon's probably the easiest.
All right. Now, I got a question for you. A lot of people who narrate their own books will often go off the script a little bit. Did you ever go off the script when you were narrating the book?
Just a tiny bit, but pretty much stuck to it because it is a parable, it is a story, and it was written very specifically to elicit that emotional change, and really, and why I said it was a challenge is there's like 10 different characters in the book, men, women, kids. Right. So I actually took a couple voice acting classes to prepare for it. So we'll see how it came out. We'll see how the reviews come in, and after the audiobook come out. But that's awesome. I think it came out all right.
I've already downloaded the Audible version, and I ordered the hard copy, and I'm excited to jump into it. Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. Very much appreciate your perspective. I learned a lot. And last questions I have for you: how can listeners learn more about you?
Probably just our main website. If they want to learn more about me and our business, it's just simple, realwealth.com. Pretty easy.
Perfect. Realwealth.com. We'll have a link to that in the show notes for anybody listening who wants to learn more about Rich. And once again, I very much appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Brian. Good to be here.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure to subscribe. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community yet, which we call a Tribe of Titans, you are missing out. Get 30 days free by clicking the link in the description to this episode, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.